Well, ski jumping is part of our culture and has been for many years. That tradition continues today with some major events each year and plans for some even bigger things in our future. We'll talk about that today, and the conversation starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, our guest this morning is the chairman of the Great Lakes Sports Commission, a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting Michigan as a premier destination for recreation, sports, and tourism. Today we'll learn more about the organization and especially about a project they're supporting to restore the glory to Upper Michigan ski jumping. Doug Luciani is our guest. Welcome to the Ryan Report.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here. I've followed you for a long time.
Well, great. It's nice to have you with us. You know, I know that your dad was a pastor in the Methodist Church and served several congregations up here, so even though you spent much of your life in Traverse City, you've spent a lot of time up here too, haven't you?
Oh yeah, I'm a full-blown Youper, and Dad, of course, was born and raised in Iron Mountain, and that's where I'll be going this weekend for Continental Cup, and it'd be nice to go back there. And we spend our lives really going across the whole Upper Peninsula with Dad, from White Pine and Rockland, Greenland, Ontonagon, Hancock, Ishpeming, Sault Ste. Marie.
And I know you graduated from Hancock?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And where did you go to school from there?
Well, I went to Central Michigan University. I was an English major and political science major there. Then went to the University of Massachusetts for graduate school in Amherst, Massachusetts for public administration.
Okay, and you told me you did some intern kind of work in Ishpeming, I believe?
Yeah, I was really lucky. While Dad had just moved to Ishpeming after I'd graduated from high school, so while I was at Central Michigan, I interned each summer in the city manager's office in Ishpeming. And then during Christmas breaks and spring breaks, I would come back and the custodian for City Hall would go on vacation and I would clean City Hall.
You had quite a range of assignments.
I think that's the way to do it.
You know, I know you've spent a number of years in Traverse City heading up the Chamber of Commerce there. How did you wind up in that job to start with?
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, my other choice for an internship those summers while I was in college was at the Marquette Chamber of Commerce.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I ended up going to Kansas City for an internship in the city of Kansas City for a year while I was in graduate school. And my first job ended up working for a construction trade association for 3 years. And then I got hired by the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, where I worked for 12 years.
Oh, really?
Became a senior vice president for business development there. Always wanted to get back to the UP. I met my wife in Kansas City. We had two beautiful little girls, first grader and a preschooler, and the Traverse City Chamber job came open. Traverse City was the third largest chamber in Michigan, and I thought, man, if I could get that job, I would go back in a heartbeat. I really missed the water, northern Michigan. Didn't look like I was going to get back to the UP anytime, so I applied and was fortunate enough to get that job. So really more than 30 years in chamber work.
Okay. You and you had a lot of success in Traverse City too.
We did. Traverse City has grown a lot. We had really good programs, and it is continued to evolve. It's been very progressive and has, I think, done a great job in terms of stewardship and in protecting and preserving the environment around it. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of Marquette. Marquette and Traverse City are usually mentioned in the same sentence by people when you're talking to legislators, business people, or just people that love love northern Michigan.
And I know you were also active in establishing a group that brought a number of chambers together in northern lower Michigan and also has a UP connection. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that. Thank you for bringing that up. We formed in 2005 what was then the Tri-Chamber Alliance. It was Traverse City, Petoskey, and Cadillac. Over the years, that's grown now to be the Northern Michigan Chamber Alliance, and we're really happy to have the Lake Superior Community Partnership as a part of that. Even though that's technically not a Chamber of Commerce, it does fulfill all the chamber functions for this region. And Amy Klickner has just been a great partner. I think Amy's the chairman of it this year, and we have including the subsidiary chambers. We have 14 different chambers of commerce, from Cadillac to Alpena and all the way to Marquette. And so we have a very robust impact with the Northern Michigan Legislative Caucus in Lansing.
And that's really what it's about, isn't it? Mainly to bring legislative issues and ideas and thoughts from Northern Michigan to legislators in Lansing.
It is, and we know that when we try to do that one community at a time, it's very difficult to have much impact in Lansing. You know, all together, our legislators, we don't have as many legislators as the Detroit area has. So we have to speak with one voice. And we're very excited that this year the top priority, and I think it has a good chance of happening, is to put an Office of Rural Development in the governor's office, an actual cabinet position that's focused solely on rural Michigan, which is primarily Northern Michigan.
I also know that you've taken on a number of other assignments. You've been appointed by all three governors, or the last three governors, I should say, to different assignments, including you were reappointed to the Grow Michigan Corporation by Governor Whitmer.
Yeah, the Grow Michigan Corporation is really a great success story for Michigan. It was started with a small seed grant from the Michigan Strategic Fund, MEDC. It's grown to more than $400 million. It's mezzanine financing for businesses, primarily industrial and commercial businesses that are distressed but that have high potential. And it has about 20 banks that are involved in the financing for Grow Michigan. And I've been fortunate to be on there and to have been appointed to that, as well as to a few other state boards.
Okay. We'll talk about the Great Lakes Sports Commission in just a couple of minutes. We'll be back with more on today's Ryan Report after we take this break. Our guest this morning is Doug Luciani. Doug does many things, but among other things, he's the chairman of the Great Lakes Sports Commission. So first of all, tell us what it is and what it does.
Yeah, the Great Lakes Sports Commission actually was the brainchild of Senator Tom Casperson. I think you had Marty Fattanti on your show just last week and talked a little bit about Senator Casperson's leadership in creating a fund to support tourism, sports-related tourism in Northern Michigan. And Northern Michigan in this case is 31 counties in the UP and Northern Lower Michigan.
And to really make it work, they had to broaden it beyond just the UP, didn't they?
Yeah, to get the legislative support, it needed some downstate projects. And one of the ones that was going on at the time was keeping the Red Wings training camp and prospect camp in Traverse City. Center Ice in Traverse City needed some financing in order to keep the Red Wings there. It turned out they got their own financing, but it was good for the lobbying efforts to have the Red Wings as part of the lobbying to get that funding. And it really started out as a much more narrow type of funding, more project specific. But as you know, when you're going through Lansing and you're trying to convince a broad group of legislators to finance something, particularly something in the UP and in Northern Michigan, it becomes broader. And so the Great Lakes Sports Commission was created with a $10 million allocation from the state, with the expectation that that would grow. We're not charged to give away $10 million. We're charged to be stewards of $10 million, and we'd like to grow that over the next 10 years into a $100 million fund to finance projects in our region. And
when you say grow that, are we primarily talking about additional appropriations from the state, or are there other sources of revenue?
Yeah, that's a great question. It'd be a combination of things. Really, most of the financing that will come out of the Sports Commission will be in the form of low-interest loans, loan guarantees, and other things that will put the money back into the fund and grow it through some of its financing activities. We also are looking for additional appropriations, long-term appropriations, a little bit at a time, but over several years, from the legislature. And then we'll be doing fundraising, and we'll have memberships as well, so people can find us on the internet and actually become members of the Great Lakes Sports Commission.
And so some of these funds that you hand out will come back to you. They will be in the form of loans, for example.
Yeah, the majority of them will come back to us, and that's really the financing for the first two projects that we're working on will be mostly in the form of loans, but with some grant financing as well.
And I know the commission operates with a board of 7 people.
Yes.
It's interesting that 5 are from the UP. You were one of the ones who is not, but you have a lot of UP history, and the 7th is a ski jumper and a real skiing enthusiast. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think they're obviously a group that understands what goes on up here and throughout northern Michigan.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. You know, northern Michigan means a lot of different things to a lot of different
Right.
people. And one of the things that I have always talked about, whether I was interviewing in Kansas City or in Massachusetts or in Traverse City, was what I learned growing up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. The values of the people here, the way you live your life, the way you take care of things. And I think, I believe that the sports commissioners having that strong presence from the Upper Peninsula brings some real common sense to the commission and truly unselfish stewardship of the funds that we were given from the state with a big vision. So yeah, but having 5 of them that live in the UP, I think of the 5, they probably were all born in the UP. I'm from downstate, but I'm from Hancock. Yeah, I'm a Uper through and through, and then Billy DeMung, the gold medalist ski jumper, is really in love with the Upper Peninsula. Really sees the potential for ski jumping here.
Well, let's talk about one of the big projects that's on your agenda, and that's Pine Mountain. And what do we hope to accomplish there?
Yeah, Pine Mountain has been a great venue for ski jumping for a long time. I remember climbing all over the old ski jump in Iron Mountain. You remember the Wide World of Sports, the Agony of Defeat, the guy going off the ski jump, that was in Iron Mountain. So it's got a great tradition, and it's kids grow up jumping in Iron Mountain and in that part of the Upper Peninsula, and at Ishpeming and other parts. But Iron Mountain had really reached a plateau of what it could actually host. And ski jumpers coming in from around the world have certain expectations anymore. They expect a nice warming hut. They expect an elevator to the top of the ski jump. They expect a ski surface that's consistent. So you can't just ice down a 2-track down the ski jump and expect them to jump on that anymore. It needs a synthetic surface that's a consistent surface, and the landing area has to be protected from wind gusts. And you know, the Pine Mountain's an older facility, and it needs a lot of upgrades to attract world-class skiing. And once it has those upgrades, it has commitments from the federal or from the International Federation of Ski Jumping to bring World Cup events to Iron Mountain, which puts us even more on the map for international sports.
Okay, we'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes. Back with more on today's show after we take one more break. Again, our guest this morning is Doug Luciani. Doug is the chair of the Great Lakes Sports Commission. Yeah, I was just sharing with Doug, having interviewed Willie Erickson a couple of years ago, a great ski jumper from Iron Mountain, and how the sport has changed and the expectations have changed. But, you know, these are jumpers who have invested a lot of time and money into what they're doing today, haven't they?
Right, and their countries, their sponsors, and they themselves have invested millions of dollars in technology and the technology of the suits that they wear to jump, and the skis and other things. And so they don't want to leave it to, you know, their success to sort of the whims of the mountain. They want a consistent jumping surface. They want to be able to train on those surfaces.
So even though some of the old-time jumpers might laugh at the idea of an elevator to the top of the jump and a warming house and all the rest of it, it's what's required today.
Yeah, and you know, going back to the Agony of Defeat jumper, I'll bet that guy would have liked to have had a nice even surface all the way down that.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is probably going to happen, the Pine Mountain?
It is going to happen. You know, I unfortunately, as I told you when we were talking off camera, I can't go into the details of the deal.
Right.
But I can tell you that there is a firm commitment from the Sports Commission, from the governor, from the legislature. All the pieces are in place, from the Kiwanis Club in Iron Mountain that operates the ski jumping venue, from the county, it is a lead pipe cinch, as we say. It is going to happen.
And there's also talk that perhaps Copper Peak may come in for some help in the future. Is that a possibility?
That is. We're working really hard right now on how to do the financing to get Copper Peak up to the world-class standards that it needs to be. You know, it is such an amazing facility, one of a kind, and the potential for that to become a year-round training venue, to do a summer World Cup event there, which would be the only World Cup event for ski jumping in the summer anywhere in the world, is very viable. And what Bob Jackwart has done, and the group that he's worked with in Ironwood to put that together and to keep that alive, and really, you know, to drive Senator Casperson's legislation last year for the $10 million is really heroic.
And that's a bigger hill, and it's also a bigger investment, isn't it, to make this all happen?
It's a significantly bigger investment, far more than what we have in funds from the Sports Commission at this time. But we've got some really creative people working on ways to get the financing put together to get that project done, and we know that it's very important for the Commission, for the Western Upper Peninsula to have that. We're still, you know, frankly, in the stage of making some of the legislators and bankers and other people in the other parts of Michigan aware that we even have ski jumping in Michigan. It's been eye-opening to them. They're like, now say this again, right? But really, if we do this Pine Mountain right, and we do Copper Peak right, and I think Ishpeming will be behind those at some point, I think we have a strong possibility with our connection with the universities, and particularly with Northern Michigan University, of maybe even bringing the U.S. ski team, U.S. ski jumping training facilities to Michigan instead of Salt Lake City.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Are there, without going into detail because we're running out of time, but are there some potential projects downstate that are being considered as well?
Yeah, there are some projects. We are currently looking at a list of about 10 different projects that we've had applications for. Probably the strongest one at this point that I think has a real good chance of getting some financing is the Great Lakes Equestrian Festival, which is a 9-week equestrian events activity that takes place in the Traverse City area. It has about a $25 million impact on Traverse City. It attracts horse people, equine people from all over, really North America and even from Europe. Prize monies of around $10 million. And so they need some facility upgrades in order to attract some new events from other parts of the country and even other parts of the world. So I think that's probably one of our strong contenders right now. And then curling is becoming just this incredible sport in terms of growth, from Detroit to Lansing, Traverse City, I'm sure in the Upper Peninsula as well. And so we've had some interest from some of the curling venues on the opportunities to bring some World Cup type events to Michigan through their activities.
Okay, all sounds great, and good luck to you and the commission, and hopefully you can come back in the future and we can find out that a lot of good things are happening.
Yes, sir. I look forward to it.
Okay. I'll be back with some other thoughts for you in just a couple of minutes. Well, let's wrap things up this morning with a science lesson of sorts. You know, we all know that December 20th or 21st is the shortest day of the year, but I'd suggest to you it's not quite as simple as that sounds. It is the shortest day of the year, but the change doesn't apply equally at both ends of the day. The truth is, the sun actually starts setting a little earlier, before that date. But at the other end of the day, in the morning, it continues to come up later, well beyond that date. At this point, you may be asking yourself, why should I care? And I guess there is no good reason. I only care because I became aware of it as I was dreading as the days get shorter every year, and eagerly await the time when they start heading in the other direction. It was because of that I started checking into dates more closely a few years ago and discovered how it really works. This year in Marquette, The earliest sunset occurred on December 5th when it went down at 5:02, and that continued until December 17th when the sun set at 5:03, which meant we had already added a minute to the end of the day, even though we hadn't reached the shortest day of the year yet. Now, I realize that a minute is not worth getting excited about, but that disparity between the sunrise and sunset continues to play out. What's happening at the other end of the day? Well, this year, sunrise on December 21st, the shortest day, was at 8:30, and it continued to come up later each day until January 11th, when it finally reversed that trend and came up a minute earlier. So where do we stand today, about 2 months since the shortest day of the year? Well, the days are already 2 hours and 17 minutes longer than they were on December 21st, but you're more likely to notice it in the evening because the sun is staying up almost an hour and a half later, but in the morning it's coming up only 53 minutes earlier. Why is this happening? I'm afraid that's well beyond my scientific knowledge, but let me take a stab at it. According to those who know, and this is not something I knew before I did some research, the primary reason is because a day, at least as far as the sun is concerned, is not always exactly 24 hours. In fact, apparently, it's exactly 24 hours only 4 times a year. It seems the reason this is happening relates to the tilt of the Earth's axis and the fact the speed of the Earth's rotation varies as it moves in an elliptical orbit around the sun, accelerating when it's closer to its gravitational pull and decelerating when it's further away. As a result, in effect, the sun lags behind the clock for part of the year and then speeds ahead of it for another. A real scientist could give you a more complete explanation, but as for me, I'm just happy the days are getting longer, and they will until June. And now, thanks to today's science lesson, we're all smarter than a third grader. Maybe. I'll be back in a minute. Before we go this morning, I want to remind you that UpperMichiganSource.com offers some options for watching this show. It's live streamed during the day on Sunday, and you can watch current and past episodes by clicking on the Ryan Report icon at that same location. Thanks to Doug Luciani for joining us this morning to update us on some exciting possibilities for Upper Michigan ski jumping in the future. I'm glad you could join us for today's conversation. Hope to see you again next Sunday morning.